All right. So, and I can do some video editing, but we're recording now. Okay, so I'm with Isaac Perigo, who happens to be my nephew, but he's also a traveling welder, and he welds structural steel and travels all over the country for his job. He's a graduate from MWI, and so we're going to interview him and see if we can learn a few things about what it's like to be a traveling welder. So Isaac, what differentiates you, what you do from other welders?
The biggest things are obviously the traveling, um, the hours we work, and then our pay. Um, we're all over the place. With traveling, you typically get a little extra money on top to live off of, and anything you don't spend on that, you put in your pocket. So it's a little added bonus every week. Um, we work a lot more hours than most anybody else. Typical work week for me is anywhere from 60 to 70 plus. Um, I would say most jobs are 60, unless they're rushing to get something done. Then you're looking at 70 to 80 hours a week. And then pay wise, typically if you're traveling, you're considered to be at the top of the heap as far as welders go. So we definitely get paid better than most guys in shops, unless they're some sort of specialty or high end shop. I mean, that's about it.
Yeah. So when you're saying like 60 to 70 hours, is that like Monday through Friday, or do you work Saturdays and Sundays sometimes too?
Oh, we're working Saturdays and Sundays. Usually 10-hour days are probably the most common thing we run into. Most guys, even the guys up top don't want to work 12-hour days. Nobody wants to do that really, but 10-hour days are fairly common. And then on your power plant shutdowns or your nuclear facilities or something like that, you're looking at 12, 13, 14-hour days sometimes. Just kind of depends on the job and what the deadlines look like.
Mm-hmm. You're probably pretty worn out by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're only like 20 years old or something, so.
Right. You recover quickly. Nothing. Yeah. A cup of coffee in the morning doesn't fix. So.
Yeah. And that extra money you mentioned, that's called per diem. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. So most jobs, they'll give you a daily. I mean, it's a daily allowance. It's just added on your paycheck at the end of the week. Pretty typically, it's between $75 and $100 a day. So that's for your hotel, for your food, for your gas. It's not taxable. So if they tell me they're going to pay me $27 an hour and $100 a day per diem, that means, and they're going to pay me set for 7 days worth of per diem. That means that at the end of the week, I get another $700 on my pay stub that is not taxed, is separate from my taxable income.
Okay. All right. So what made you want to become a welder?
Well, the money. Anybody that tells you any different is probably full of crap. So that's what it comes down to. Make good money. And the traveling aspect, I don't get to see a lot as far as when I'm sitting, working somewhere, because you just don't have a lot of time off. So you spend most of your time sleeping or doing your laundry or getting food or something. But I've been to 6 or 7 states in the last year for extended amount of time. So got to see most of the East Coast this last year, even if it was just, driving through it. But
so it's basically the income.
Yeah. Yeah.
Motivation.
I mean, for anybody out there that's doing what I'm doing, that's what you're in it for. You're not, it's fun. Parts of it are fun, but you're never going to look back at it and be like, that was the most fun I ever had or something like that. So,
because it's work. That's what you're working when you're gone.
Yeah. When you're on the clock, and they're pushing you pretty hard. So
Because you and I talked earlier today, and you're heading to South Carolina, so you're not going to go play on the beach while you're down there. You're going to go there and work, and that's pretty much what you're going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good example. So it's a 9 days. We're missing 1 day, so yeah, we're gonna be out there for 9 days. But a lot of people look at me like, oh, you're only somewhere for 9 days at a time. That's, you can't really make that much money in 9 days. Well, we're gonna walk away from that job with $3,000 in our pockets. So when you look at it that way, a lot of people, that's 3 paychecks for them. So
Yeah.
a week and a half of work for us. So that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, that's good pay. That's more than welders making in my community. Students that are in my community are familiar with welders that are welding boats, and they're not making that $2,000 to $3,000 a week. No, not even close. So what training or certification do you need to do what you're doing?
Most of it is field experience based. So I do hold 5 or 6 welding certifications. They're only good for 6 months at a time. If I don't use them for 6 months, technically they're no good anymore, which isn't a huge deal. Every job as a welder that you're going to get on, you're going to walk in there and they're going to test you. You're going to have to weld out a test coupon, and it's either going to be x-rayed or bent or ultrasonic. They're going to do an ultrasonic test on it to see if you can weld or not, basically. And if you fail that test, they're going to tell you to pack your bags and go on to the next one. If you pass it, then you're going to be hired on with them. So, they're good to have, good to show, because then companies are a little more willing to open up and hire you because they say, okay, you've passed that test before. But most of it is just field experience and being able to walk into some sort of processing plant or power plant or whatever and know what's going on, and I guess understand what you're being told, because there's a certain lingo that goes along with it.
So do you feel like MWI prepared you well for type of work you're doing?
Oh yeah. With them especially, I couldn't have been happier. There's several welding schools in the nation, and I've worked with guys from a lot of them, and I was far and above the best guy. And we're all around the same age, had all gone to welding school around the same time. It hadn't been like I'd been in the field longer and they had just broke out or something like that. We'd all kind of had the same amount of time in the field. And I was head and shoulders above every single one of those guys in like expectations of what it was actually like, and my ability to weld, and the way I handled myself. And MWI, I felt like prepared me really well for that. All their instructors are top tier. You're talking some of the best guys in the nation at what they do. Any of them could walk on any job site and make however much money. They're all at the top of the game as far as welders go. So
awesome. So even going to MWI, like you said, when you go on a job, you still got to pass their tests.
Right. Right. And they prepare you for that at MWI. You do test and you do get certifications there. So you're familiar with kind of the testing process, and they run it like a job site will be ran, and they use the same standards, if not stricter, a little stricter standards than what a job site would run. And they don't sugarcoat what it's like. They're not going to tell you that you're just going to walk out there and have instant success and you're not going to have to work for it. All of their instructors are very, very upfront about what it's really like. Part of it, not being a state ran school, the way they can present things and the way they can talk to you is part of it. Is a lot different, than a state ran school. They don't have to worry about public, I guess not really public image, but as much about how the state feels about what they're doing. They're going to be, when you're out in the field, language is really, really rough as part of the game.
Mhm.
And they're kind of the same way there. Um, you're going to hear anything and everything. You're going to hear words that you didn't even know existed,
Mhm.
but it does prepare you for the reality of, when I get in the field, if I don't, I'm going to be talked to that way all the time. And these guys are in the field, they're going to be serious about it. They're not going to be joking around with me. They're going to really probably mean what they're saying. So
So if you got thin skin,
yeah,
you might want to think about it for a little bit.
right. Yeah, definitely. Last job I was on, this guy, he's older than me, 22, didn't have the thickest skin, and ended up, I guess he was afraid of heights or something, and we were working like 30 or 40 foot above the ground, and he was on, he's tied off, he's got all the safety equipment on, and he had a panic attack or something, started crying. Well, our general foreman sees this, and he didn't, he did talk to him nicely. He didn't say, come down here and let's talk about it. He cussed him out and
Mhm.
called him some names, and it just made that guy cry even more. And then the rest of the job site, the rest of the time we're out there, that guy's getting made fun of every single day because he just
Yeah.
cried in front of 20 of the other grown men. So
Yeah.
um,
Can be pretty tough if you're not used to that kind of language or being talked to
yeah,
that. Yeah. And
and you got to be able to take criticism.
I'm sure there's a lot of tough guys on the job site too. So you don't get too mouthy with
Yeah,
them.
no,
Okay.
and you don't.
So what's your favorite
But,
part about being a traveling welder?
outside of the paycheck,
Yeah.
to me, I look at it like, so my first job I was on in a Schwan plant, in Kentucky, and every Tombstone pizza, I think, in the nation's made there. So every time somebody eats a Tombstone pizza, I was part of that pizza being made. I think it's really cool. Another job I was on was at another refrigeration facility in North Carolina, a food line. They're kind of like Walmart or Aldi's. So anytime somebody gets food, kind of in that area or that part of the the East Coast, it probably went through that distribution center. So then I was part of that food getting delivered. Every Volkswagen SUV that's going to roll off the line after this year, I was part of, because I was working in a Volkswagen plant this winter. So to me, it's kind of cool to be able to look back on that and say, like, I was part of all of this. And as my career continues, it's just gonna, that list is just gonna grow longer and longer of things that I've directly contributed to being built or processed or put to market.
That's awesome. So what's your least favorite?
Um, Probably the hours worked. That's got to be the biggest thing. If you don't mind working, it's really not a big deal. When you're in it and when you're doing it, you're going to be like, man, this really sucks. I've been going and going. I've been working 10 hours a day for all this time, but then when you're done, you're like, wow, that really wasn't that bad. I was just finding something to complain about because I was tired or whatever. So if you like to work, there's nothing that's really bad about it. As long as you like to work and you got good personality, um, there's nothing too terrible. It's a lot of hours, but that's about it.
You're definitely going to need to have a real work ethic in order to do it.
Yeah.
What you do. Mm-hmm.
Especially as a young guy, because there's a stigma that surrounds young people about being lazy, and that follows you. If you're young to a job site, you're going to walk out there and every single person out there is going to look at you. All your supervisors are going to look at you and say, this guy's lazy. And they're going to watch you for the first 2 weeks you're there and see if you work hard or not. And if you don't work hard, they're just going to get ready. So, we'll find somebody who's willing to work hard.
Right. So they could be kind of like gunning for you if you're playing on your phone or whatever. And
yeah. Sure. Yeah. Best policy with your phone is just leave it in the truck at the beginning of your shift and go check it on your break and on your lunch. So
that's really good advice, I think, because outside of like a family member that's near death, there's probably no reason for you to have your phone on you while you're at work.
Right. And if something like that's happening, typically speaking, if you go and talk to your supervisor or your foreman, they understand, they're human too. They have hearts too. They've all been probably in that situation on the job site. So, if if there's a family emergency that you need to keep tabs on, or, whatever it is, if there's something going on in your life that you do need to have contact with your family for, they do understand,
Cool.
most of the time.
What's the range of potential income for a traveling welder? You said that's your greatest motivation. So what would be the range that a student could, high school student could look to?
Starting out, you can look for, at 20 years old, 80 plus. 80 is a pretty easy number to obtain in a year, honestly. So, and that's bottom. I worked with guys who were clearing well into the six figures every year. I had a supervisor who had been a welder for years and years and years and moved up to a supervisor position, and he was making $250,000 a year.
Wow.
I worked for another guy who had been a welder for 20 years, went back to college for construction management, and then stepped into a project manager role and was making millions of dollars a year. So there's really an endless range. Just kind of depends on what path you take, whether you stop at being a welder or if you go up into those management positions or not.
Mm-hmm. So the sky's the limit, and taking a route of like what you did with a school that, how long was your school time wise?
4.5 months.
4.5 months. Okay. So in 4.5 months, you can get a job where you might be making 80,000 if you're willing to travel and put up with people and stuff like that. Okay.
Yep.
If you were to talk to a high school student that was interested in being a traveling welder, what kind of advice would you give to that student?
Right after you graduate in your summer, find a company that is willing to hire you on as a first year apprentice position. Not necessarily a union, just some sort of, any company as a general labor, whatever, but in a traveling position, and work for 3 months minimum with them. Because I went to school with a lot of guys who thought they wanted to be traveling welders, dropped 20 grand to go to school, took that loan out, and then realized that traveling wasn't for them. And now they're working in their weld shop at home, and they can, a paycheck a month goes solely to that loan payment. And they're not going to be able to pay it off early or anything like that because they got their other bills. Whereas, I was lucky enough that I didn't really have too many fantasies about the road. I kind of knew what to expect going in, but I was also lucky enough that I enjoy it. So, for me, a paycheck, that covers my monthly bills, and so I'm never stressed about if I'm going to be able to cover my bills that month or not.
Mm-hmm. You saving your money?
Yeah, trying to. You
Okay.
get a little money in your pocket. Sometimes it's hard, but
that's some of the advice I give students that are interested in traveling welding is to save some of that money so that when you retire, you can retire and not have to get another job.
Get a retirement plan set up, whether it's you get on with the company and get a 401k, or you set up something independent like a Roth IRA. But typically what I shoot for is to save at least a quarter of my paycheck. So, and that's, the way I do it is a quarter of my paycheck goes straight into a savings account. So I'm saving more than that, but a minimum is, typically $500 a week into just a savings account. So it doesn't get touched.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, Isaac, is there anything else you'd want to add to what we talked about?
I mean, if you're gonna do it, do it. You know, don't go halfway with it. It's something that you got to be all into. If you go to welding school, you're gonna hear those guys preach it, but keep your head down. Don't mess around. Keep your head down. Keep burning rod. That's the only way you get better. You don't get better by watching other people do it or by talking to somebody. You get better by welding. So,
Mhm.
um, you know, go out there and get it done, I guess.
Yep. All right. Well, Isaac, I really appreciate taking time to speak to me and to high school students, and stay safe and keep doing good work.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.